Well, we are a tri-generational conversation for you, the emerging leader. Welcome on into the Limitless Leadership Lounge for another week and another great conversation with a leader who we know is going to have a great impact on your leadership journey. I am John Gehring, joined alongside Dr. Numa Kareem and Coach Jim Johnson, as always. And Coach has brought along a very special guest as well that we're excited to dive in with this week. So, Coach, let's go ahead and introduce Waldo.
Yes, I've had the pleasure to meet Waldo at the National Speakers Association conference, and I'd like to share a bio. He's got so much, but we're going to try to, so we don't have the whole show about his bio. So, because he's done so many great things in his life, but known as the Wingman, retired Lieutenant Colonel Waldo Waldman is a Hall of Fame speaker, author of the best-selling book Never Fly Solo. Waldo is a graduate of the U.S. Air Force. He holds an MBA with a focus in organizational behavior. One of my favorite quotes from him is, "We survive solo, but we win together." Waldo is also a family man with his wife Dana and son Ace. So welcome, Waldo, to the Limitless Leadership Lounge. We're looking forward to having you.
Great to be here, Jim and team. Looking forward to our mission today.
So I'm going to dive into something that shouldn't be too off base for you, but I'm curious. Share our audience, because you talk a lot, and obviously I built teams for a long time in trying to always talk about. But share about the importance of the wingman.
So ultimately, I believe a wingman is somebody who you feel comfortable going to for help. It's that person in your life who you trust, you honor their integrity, their preparation, their mindset, their compassion, and you bring your problems to them. And when people are in your life that you feel comfortable going to for help, you build relationships and you help solve problems. And I think that's what the job of a leader is, and a coach, to lift people up and help solve problems and move people forward to a better vision in their life. And so if you look at yourself in the mirror and say, what am I doing to grow? I think it's important for us also to be able to trust that person staring back at us every single day, to say, do I trust him or her? That Top Gun who's looking at me when I zip up my flight suit. So part of that whole relationship and trust focus is working on ourselves, being the an embodiment of trust and courage and accountability and compassion, all those things that make great human beings and leaders, in order for that to bleed out to others. And so that's kind of like the embodiment of what I discuss. We in a fighter squadron, you had a lot of men and women who you can go to for help, but ultimately you wanted to be the person that others can come to for help and lead folks through change and challenge and dodge the missiles of that are coming in the air and in life.
Although I got to jump in one more, because you said this word a lot in our fellow speaker and friend David Horsiger that we've had on the podcast
Yes,
talks
sir.
about all the time about trust. My question to you is, because I do a lot of leadership presentations as well, and I always ask, how important is trust? And it's 100%. But then I kind of shock them when I ask them, well, how do you build trust? So what's your advice for a young leader on how they would build trust with their team?
So I believe, trust, once again, it starts with you and the type of values that you have and the sense of accountability and standards that you have in your life, because you can philosophize, you can even coach on a basketball court, in a fighter squadron, in a business setting through your words. But ultimately, our example is what truly sets the tone. So if you're not living a trusting life, uh, admitting when you mess up, working on yourself, showing compassion and empathy to people in your life. If you're not holding yourself to a higher standard and doing the hard work behind the scenes, today I just meditated before I participated in this. I wanted to get my mind right, but most importantly, my heart. Um, that trust is built through your actions, through how you handle yourself and carry yourself as a human. And so that is the most important thing, I think, to embrace trust, because people are watching you all the time. In the words of George Patton, General George Patton, he said, "You're always on parade."
Mhm.
And so the things you do, the things you say, how you show up in your life is important. But then it's also, I think it's situational many times as well. You have to understand the person who you're leading or coaching or mentoring or collaborating with, because everybody looks at trust in a different way many times. Now, the fundamentals should be there: integrity, honor, respect, accountability. But maybe the person that you're coaching wants to see that you are a better listener. You may have the skills to coach them and the experience and the acumen, but maybe it's that heartfelt connection, that marinade, which connects human beings to human beings, is more important for them. Or maybe they want to say, like, look, my son's 13 years old playing soccer. What may be more important to him is a coach who knows how to teach and understands the game of soccer and the skills. He doesn't maybe, and I'm not saying this is with Ace, he may not care about his ability to connect and motivate and inspire. He wants to see that coach knows how to talk about the plays and the tactics, right? So you have to understand the person that you're coaching to connect with them and what's important for them to solidify that trust, so they'll ultimately listen to you and take the actions necessary for growth. Does that resonate? Because it is situational at times, because people need different things in order to take the action necessary to grow.
Right.
So true. And Waldo, I love that quote of yours. Your comfort zone is your danger zone. And I know, because I deal with young people. My nonprofit organization is Heroes for All, and we try to match young people with their skill and potential. But from your story, I have seen that your dad said that you were afraid of height. How could you be a pilot? But you had that grit to overcome all those discomforts. So how did you overcome your fear of height and all those elements to become like a pilot, an F-15 F-16 pilot? So if you could share that story to inspire some young people, many of the young people who are still afraid to go beyond that comfort zone.
Right. Look, we all know that discomfort is the impetus to change. The toughest things in life are often, are the things that help us to grow from the inside out. When we deal with adversity, when we're down on ourselves, when we have an injury, when we lose a sale, we lose a game, something happens in our life that is a missile, right? A challenge that we have to avoid or potentially shoot down ourselves. That's when trust is tested. And once again, it goes back to ourself. So with me, I want to be a pilot, to graduate the Air Force Academy, which is where I went to school, which is the premier academy for eventually becoming an Air Force officer and fighter pilot. In order to graduate, you had to jump off this diving board. Now, I was afraid of heights since I was a child. When I was a kid at the local pool, we never jumped off the diving board. My twin brother might make fun of me all the time. And so here I am, 33 feet high, knowing that if I didn't jump, you don't graduate.
Wow.
That's as simple as that. It's just one of those standards that we have. If you don't jump, you don't graduate. So it's the ability to face your fear and to take that step and step out of that comfort zone, literally and figuratively, and jump and release the past, take the step, and then relinquish your trust to the water, that at the end of the day, this is going to be what's best for you. And so I could talk about this for a few hours, and it's going to be the basis of my next book on fear and courage. But you have to have something that's greater than your fear, pushing you to take the step and to deal with the discomfort that's necessary for growth. For me, it was eventually, becoming a pilot. My dream, my passion had to be greater than my fear. You have to find something in your life that you love more. Your love has to conquer fear. So what you love more has to be greater than the fear that you have, And so tapping into that and finding out the root of what it is that you truly love, because I believe it's not necessarily what we fight for that helps us to grow. It's what we love for that ultimately helps us to grow. And I'll say it in another way. It's not what keeps us up at night that counts. It's what gets us out of bed.
Right.
What keeps us up at night is fear-based. It's anxiety-provoking. It's debilitating many times. And that's a very common business thing. What keeps you up at night? Well, the economy and my turnover and, blah, 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 blah. Right? But what gets you out of bed is love-based. It's aspirational. It's courage-based. It excites you. It's more sustaining. And
Right.
so I had to tap into what I loved more than what I feared. And many times in life, we're so focused on what we fear, the diving board, losing the shot, right? The basketball throw, losing the game, embarrassing ourselves. We let our ego, subjugate our love. So part of building trust in ourselves and ultimately in other people and tapping into what they love is getting to know them, finding out what they value. What are they, not just once again, what they're fighting for, what they're loving for, and make that be that beacon of hope and keep that front and center. So the 33 feet high diving board, my fear of heights and panic attacks, by the way, which I also had, I'm not sure if you read that in my bio, which was
Yeah.
1,000 times worse than my fear of heights, by the way. You had to keep that front and center. And I call it envision the victory. You got to
Right.
envision what it feels like to jump off that diving board when you finish that combat mission after 8 hours, knowing that you overcame the biggest barrier to success, which is yourself. And saying, I know what it's like. Wow, I overcame myself. I got the degree. The sale came. My spouse, the woman I love said yes. I won the game, right? So you got to feel that victory and vision and let it, just totally flood your soul and your mindset. And when you tap into that and subjugate it to fear, that's when the magic happens. Easier said than done.
Right.
But it takes a lot of time to do this. And then we're all adults, right? We've been through some challenges. Our test results were positive from the doctor. We had dealt with rejection and all sorts of things. I'm sure you've all had your own issues. And so we
Yeah,
always
and
got to
this
remind
resonated
ourselves.
with me so much because I know when my job is, I'm out of job and I have only $800 in my account. And I had to choose, like, should I start my nonprofit? And the whole process will take $700. I don't know where the next money is going to come, but I
Right.
just woke up and I jumped into it where everybody was telling me, what are you doing? Are you going mad? That's the last amount. I like, no, I need to register and start this dream that I have always wanted to. So, and that paid off because I didn't want to live a life with regret that I
Yes,
did
ma'am.
not move forward with it.
Oh, so beautifully said. Yeah, that regret. It's not the things that we do that we regret. It's often the things that we don't do.
Right.
And it taps in,
Right.
Doc, with what you're saying, because what your nonprofit and even coaching and mentoring in life, it's about service, right? Service, like how are you truly helping other people? And it's kind of like passe, help others and serve others. But truly, when you step out of your head and focus on who needs you,
Mm. Right.
I call it distracting yourself from yourself. And Coach, I know you can agree with this as well. When you're so focused on who needs you and helping them through, you're not focused on your fears. And so I want to just share a little bit. When I was on those combat missions for 8 hours at night, having that panic attack,
Mm.
freaking out, saying, I got to get the heck out of this plane. I got to bail out, right? I mean, not good when you're at 30,000 feet over enemy territory in Iraq, right? And so part of the solution to subjugating my fear to my love and service was focusing on my team. Who needed me? Where are they? How can I help them? Who needs me? Who am I supporting in my flight? It's when we're focused on ourselves and our own fears and our own issues and insecurities. That's when the anxiety and tension and fear builds up and we can't perform in that. But when we distract ourselves from ourselves, focus on that person who needs us with love and compassion and service, find out ways to help them. Now we're in that zone of love and contribution. We're no longer in that anxiety mode, and we could truly make a difference in our life. And that's what helped me out. And truly, I'm going through that now. As I mentioned, my son's going through an illness, and you just gotta just give that total love and give them that courage and focus to get through these tough times. And that's how I think we can succeed and build that trust and inspire others to do the same.
This conversation
So true.
about fear is so powerful. And I know there's short term fear and there's long term fear. There's those panic attacks, there's those physical fight or flight moments, right? And then there's the long term life circumstances that are just continuous issues that produces fear in us over the long term. But I think you've made some great points, Waldo, about how these anxieties are similar and the approaches to them should be similar. You've really talked a lot, said a lot of great things about what we can do mentally to overcome these. Are there some physical things in that moment during that 8 hour mission while you're just about to jump off that 33-foot diving board? Are there some physical things as well that we can do to overcome our fears?
Yeah. Yeah. It's because it is a very physiological thing. It's just this mental game that we have to play. I want to just tap into one thing too, because you mentioned about how do we talk to to the kids, about how do they overcome their fears. Focusing on what you love, marinating on that, but also preparation is key, my friends, right? The
Mm.
mental game has to be won on the ground. So part of this, and it ties in what you were saying, John, is hey, if you're getting ready to do a sales call or getting up to bat and it's 2 out, bottom of the ninth, you're down, but down by one, and there's two folks on, right? Or you're getting ready to take that free throw shot, coach, right? You better have envisioned this and practiced this 1,001 times before that took place. Okay. Because that muscle memory, the confidence, that subconscious confidence that comes because you did the shot, you practice it over and over again, is something that you could do physiologically and mentally and physically before the actual incident happens. So you got to put in the work. You just get, I was playing soccer with my son yesterday. He hasn't been playing much because he's also overcoming an injury with his knee, snapped his cartilage. And he's getting all frustrated. I said, look, you're taking these shots. You're building the muscle memory while people are on the couch, lazy today. You're out here shooting
Right.
and practicing. Marinate on that. Build that confidence. You got to get out there. We have a saying in the fighter pilot world, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in battle.
Mm.
Okay. The more you sweat, the less you bleed. The more we fight like we train. So kids, folks, leaders who are listening to this, you've got to put in the time, the practice, right? And coach, you know this as well, that confidence that builds. So that's a subconscious or an intentional game that you have to have, because the muscle memory will kick in when you're having that panic attack, when you're at 30,000 feet. Okay. So once
Right.
again, focus on the team, focus on your radar, focus on something specific outside of your head. Okay. Now, focusing on a human being is good, but also when I was flying, I was focusing on the cockpit, the radar. I was focusing
Mm.
on my teammates, right, et cetera. So distracting yourself from yourself is important. And then also breathing, right? Watch your breath.
Mm.
Breathe in slowly. They call it box breathing. There's also so many different things that are
Right.
going on, right? And so slow down. And when you focus on your breath as well, and how you're breathing, they say the mind can't focus on more than one thing at a time. That's why meditation is so important, when you're
Mm.
really focused in hitting that zone. And so physiologically, it will help you as well to deal with that. Okay. Getting in conversation with someone is a great way as well.
Mm.
On the radios, I would talk on the radio sometimes. In combat, that was a lot more difficult, but in training, hey, tell me what's your status? Talking. If I was flying with somebody else, because I was an instructor pilot with students many times, and by the way, they didn't know I was more afraid of failing on that flight than them, right? Because my claustrophobia is always present. I would get in a conversation, talk. If you're in a tough situation, pick up the phone, talk to somebody, ideally somebody who's a harbinger of hope, a comrade of courage, who can fire you up and motivate you and get you thinking about what's important. Okay. So this is important in life, distracting yourself with people who love you and can coach you and mentor you up as well. So when you're in that danger zone, or when you're in the dungeon of doubt, find somebody, that lifter, the folks who are going to lift you up
Mm.
when you're challenged, and reset your trajectory in your head. Okay. So those are some of the things that you could do when you're feeling that doubt and fear to get back on the right flight plan, the right vector as well.
Very powerful, Waldo. Before I want to share a quick story with you, and then it gets you into your own personal growth. So my last year in coaching, I had a pretty good player. They ended up playing a couple years in the NBA. But his senior year, he got fouled with 6 seconds to go, down 3. He had 3 foul shots, and he made all 3, and we won in overtime. And I'll never forget the newspaper person after the game interviewing the locker room say, Anthony, what were your thoughts? And he goes, Coach had taken us through so many mental imagery. I knew those were going in. And so the power of the mind is really something. I know you practice it. So I'm just curious, because we often talk about, as a young leader, we forget that the first person you got to do is lead yourself. Can you share some advice on some of the things you do physically, mentally, spiritually on a daily basis to help you be the best leader of yourself so you can be effectively leading others?
Okay. Great question. And I think, the habits that we have, the commitments, what we're committed to, I always, if I'm coaching somebody, a leader or a peer, I say, show me your day and I'll show you your success. Like, tell me your habits. What are you doing? What is the process of your day? And the subtle yet important things that you do. And then I'll show you your success. And it's hard because we need to develop those disciplines and patterns. So some of the standard things that I try to do during the day, as I call it, setting the vector of your day, right? Like the vector, the thrust and the direction. Can't just be your attitude, mindset, and motivation. It's got to be the direction, the disciplines, and the processes. So I read something spiritual every day. I want to kind of get myself connected to my higher purpose, to our creator, however you call it, God, Allah, whatever, right? And so I want to get connected. I want to repurpose my mindset for that. I always like to start my day in service, right? Start your day in service, feeding the cats, trying to make my wife a cup of coffee if she's up after me, helping the animals, like, thinking about other people before, and being in that servant mindset also helps me as well. I try to work out 4 times a week, either through yoga or something where my heart rate is going, where I'm sweating and I'm pushing myself physiologically and physically. I say physiologically because if you're running, or you're doing that yoga stretch and you're in the downward dog, or you're doing something and you're in that zone where you got to breathe through it, that tension, that breathing, that focus, knowing that this too shall pass, but overcoming yourself is a way that we could build resilience in life. And so, and it's the same thing doing those extra reps in the gym and pushing yourself. I say that pain leads to peace. And if you've done yoga, obviously maybe doctor, you do that. Obviously it's a practice in India. One of my best friends, she's an amazing yoga instructor. Anybody who's doing physical activity, Coach and John, you look like a stud, so I'm sure, and you're out there doing the work. And so when you're suffering through that, you're suffering through that extra rep and overcoming yourself physiologically, the endorphins, all that great stuff fills you up. But psychologically, you're overcoming yourself. And it's like, I think there was some yoga teacher who I love, and I follow him on YouTube. It's like, it's this amazing drug called the I did it drug, right? Yeah. I did it. Like, I overcame myself. And it builds, once again, this confidence that only comes from after you're doing the work, the trust you have in yourself because you put in the time. And that's what builds trust. That's how I can coach my son. That's how I can coach others from the stage or somebody else, because I knew I did the work. I read the book. I did the meditation. I did the focus. I prepared for this call. I've been on your website, Jim. You helped prepare me for these questions, right? And so you got to put a little bit of grit and effort in. You got to grind before you glide. We're gliding on this podcast, and this is a quote that I made up. You got to grind through. You got to put in the work. You got to sharpen the sword. You got to grind it out. And then when you do that, then you can glide for a little bit. But then if you glide too much, guess what? The rust is going to build up. The muscle's going to atrophy. Your mindset's going to dissipate. And so this constant definition of growth, and it's how the world and the universe and God works, I believe. Nature is always about cleanliness and cleaning and pulling the weeds. Watch animals in nature, right? Watch yourself. Don't become complacent in your health and fitness. We must be putting in that physiological, physical, and mental health to avoid the complacency bug. Hey, and there's also a time to sit down and have a cup of ice cream and be a little lazy and just let your body rest and be silly. But then our natural state must be continuously putting in the work. And we're all putting on the years here, where some are older than others, right?
Mhm.
You got to earn your health and mindset wings every day. So once again, that trust that's built, but I think that's how we build that trust and connection with others, through our
Right.
example. And now we have ideas and acumen to coach others to success and lead them through change and challenge.
Dr.
Yeah.
Green, I know
Yeah.
you have a question, but I just have a
Go
quick
ahead,
follow-up for Waldo.
please.
You mentioned something very important that's really changed my mindset in life, and that is keeping promises you make to yourself.
Yes,
Mhm.
sir.
Now, what sorts of promises do you make to yourself, and what promises would you recommend young leaders make to themselves to build confidence through keeping those promises?
Okay. And so promises, obviously, I think can come in the form of commitments that you make, and maybe your schedule. How,
Mm.
during the day, you can't wing it. I have a saying, wingmen never wing it. You can't sell by the seat of your pants. You can't lead by the seat of your pants, and you really can't live by the seat of your pants. You have to have a plan, disciplines that happen minute by minute, through the day, through the week, right? And so the best way you can honor your commitments and fulfill your promises is by saying, what is the plan that I'm going to do today? Will I stick to them? My prayer, my coaching, my meditation, my going for a walk, my sending my wife a kind note, my studying, my putting in the piano practice, whatever it is. You've got to come up with a plan.
Mm.
Now, many people don't have a plan, and that's why they need coaches. That's why all of us are here. That's why, Jim, you're so successful in your life, on the basketball court and out. And so part of success and building trust is finding the best plan that works for you, and then coaching others through their plan. Last night, I actually I want to see if I may be able to show you something here. Okay, here you go. This is living proof, my friends. Let me show you this real quick. And hopefully it's going to pop on the screen. I got to move this over. I came up with a little plan last night. So I don't know if you could see this. So here's a
Yeah.
weekly planner. Okay.
Right.
Weekly
Mhm.
planner. And I created this last. I said, that's it. We're not flying by the seat of our pants. It's summertime. We're having a plan today. Now I put in some ideas here, because you never do anything without the general, my wife, reviewing it, right? And so, and I'm not sure if you could see this, but it talks about going for a walk, meditating, reading something 30 minutes a day, limited time, going for a bike ride, having fun activities, hitting the gym, right? And so part of it was also this self-care.
Mm.
Self-care checklist. My son's name is Ace. You can't see it at the top there, but make your bed, take your medications and vitamins, meditate, go for a walk, red light therapy. We just got some red light, have a power nap, try a new hobby. Right. And so no phone 30 minutes before bed. So I got this off the web. I'm like, all right, I got to figure out what's good here. So I tweaked it. And so people need ideas. I need ideas. I'm like, crap, what am I doing? I got to change. That's why I took up transcendental meditation. I just went for stem cell therapy in Medellin, Colombia, because my body was cranky, and I made an investment of myself. What are the assets and tools and weapon systems out there to help me
Mm.
lift myself out? Now, children, teens, young adults may not have enough of the weapon systems, the plan. We have our plan, but as we get older and change, the plan that worked when we were 30 may not be the same plan that we need when we're in our 50s. Our life changes, The terrain changes, our environment changes, so we must incorporate new mechanisms, weapon systems, flight plans to become a success. So this is why coaches are so important. This is why reading and humility and being around others who have the acumen and experience. You could say, hey, have you thought about this, Waldo or Jim? Or, Doc, have you thought about this podcast or this
Mm.
probiotic or this new technique?
Exactly. Yeah. Continuously like learning about my health, my body, my mind. And that is why every morning, as you mentioned, like intentional, waking up intentionally, what are the things we will do? And so that we are not wasting our life randomly doing nothing. So thank you so much for all those tools, because I think this would be so much helpful for all our listeners. They can use these tools, and you can Google these tools. How to make my life better, how to meditate, what is the box breathing, 444. So I'm teaching the box breathing to my mom who
Yes, ma'am.
recently had a stroke. So all those things are so important and crucial to go into that next level of mastery. And my next follow-up question, because I'm so curious, because you have been a fighter pilot and then you are in the world of business, so there have been a huge shift. So being a decorated combat pilot, did you find some principles that you used in the battle? Actually, you can really transfer those into this battlefield of business, the competitive world of business.
Yeah, great question, ma'am. And so it kind of goes back to the fight like you train. You know, I have a discipline of preparation, and I put in the time. I want to become as much of a master as I can. I believe a Top Gun isn't necessarily about being the best. It's about doing your best every single day and accepting the outcome as long as you've done your best and put in the time. So I prepare. And this is part of what I do in business before I pick up the phone, before I do a speech, before I connect with folks. I want to build that confidence through preparation. So that's a key aspect as well. Also, discipline, habits and rituals and disciplines, honoring your commitments to fulfilling your promises that you were talking about, John. I'm pretty disciplined when I have a plan. I like to stick to it, right? And so if you become complacent, and lack the discipline to stick through the things that you may not want to do because it's painful or an inconvenience, you won't be a success. And the military taught me a lot about discipline.
Hmm.
And I would be totally remiss, and we could talk about all these things for hours because we're all passionate about this. It's the fact that I had my team who were checking my blind spot. Part
Hmm.
of my success in life, and Coach Jim could appreciate this, is the fact that in life, you may not see the big picture. When you're strapped into your particular jet, you can't see your most vulnerable position, which is behind you. You
Yeah.
don't know if you're leaking fuel or on fire while you're in your plane. You don't know if an enemy's sneaking up on you. However, if somebody's flying on your wing
Hmm.
at your right, 3 o'clock, or left, 9 o'clock, if you can position the clock, they look over their shoulder and can see your blind spot. They can
Yeah.
see what you don't see and help you build the perspective and 360-degree view we need in life. On and off the court, right, Jim? In and out of the cockpit. And so part of my success, joining the National Speakers Association, meeting great people like Jim, watching his character, reading the books, attending the seminars, finding out folks in my life who I built relationships with, who I can say the three most important words in life, which are I need help.
Hmm.
Who have the credibility, who have the honor, who I trust, which happens not overnight, but through continuous demonstrated connections and sometimes conflict, which is resolved.
Right.
And so they help build my picture. So part of my success in the business world was because I had peers and mentors and coaches and folks who helped me think outside my cockpit and got me on the right flight path. And it will also tell me the action to take. And then I tried to get my ego out of the way. Many times it didn't happen in the military because I was young and immature. I didn't like the feedback. I learned.
Hmm.
Now, I was inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame. As soon as I heard about that, I'm like, how do I get better? Somebody coach me, help me get better. What am I missing here? And so it can happen in the cockpit. It can happen on a basketball court, in business, with your relationship with your spouse. I have a great wife, but sometimes it's challenging. I got to talk to my friends. Hey, the people who I respect who are in great relationships, what advice would you give me? Help me not be such a butthead at home. What am I missing here? So part of it is being approachable, being coachable, knowing that you may not see the big picture. And so that is a huge part that I learned in the military flying fighters, which has helped me tremendously in the business
Right.
world and in my life.
That was a great visual of the wingman. I think that was so powerful, and we all have that in our lives. And I mean, Coach and
Mm.
I have an accountability call each week that we do. I think that's so important to have an accountability partner, whether that be for business, for life, for exercise, for both, all of the above. Right? What would you look for in an accountability partner, or somebody that you would want to do life with, and have that accountability, and keep yourself to that standard?
First of all, somebody who emulates it in their own life, right? Don't tell me how to make $1 million or how to be a better coach or how to be a better fitness person, better health, unless you're doing it in your own life. I think the example is important because many times that person went through the rigmarole and the pain and the PTSD, so to speak, of growth. And so the reason why I was a great instructor pilot, I taught young men and women how to fly jets before I became a fighter pilot, by the way, is because I made every mistake in the book. I went through hell learning these mistakes, and I processed how I learned. And so when I coached other people how to fly, and then I coached the teachers, I was a coach, I was teaching the teachers how to instruct students. It's very, very important when you're finding somebody in your life to do that, right? So somebody who's emulated it. Also, somebody in my life who's willing to tell me what I need to hear and not what I want to hear.
Mm.
To be willing to piss me off because they love me enough to do so. To bruise my ego if they need to in a tactful way, right? Hard to do. But I don't want to hang out with yes men and yes women in my life. I want to be with people who love me enough to say, hey, Waldo, look, you're looking stressed, or you're gaining too much weight, or I watched how you were treating your son or your wife at dinner that time. Hey, you may want to think about this. Wow, I didn't even realize I was so stern, right? Sometimes my initial responses may be a little different, right? Sometimes I could be turned into that fighter pilot and the officer instead of the husband or the parent, right? So those are the friends that I want. And so I have a saying, I want to share it with you. Make your friends your mentors and your mentors your friends.
Mm.
The people that coach me in my life are my friends. The people that mentor in me in my life are my friends. And I want them to be the same.
Right.
And so children who are listening to this, young teens, adults, be careful who you spend time with on the weekends, like my dad said. If they're not willing to humble me, to inspire me, to piss me off in a loving way, to bruise my ego,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be with those type of people.
Great point.
Mm.
Although as we get close to wrapping up, respect for your time, but I have one final question, and I believe probably Dr. Kareem and John may have one as well. But we hear so much about, and you spend so much time working with organizations and building teams, but the thing we hear all the time, so what advice would you give a leader that's taking over on how they can build a great team culture?
So first, understand the values that are important to you that are non-negotiable.
Mm.
Accountability, integrity, right? Maybe, which doesn't always mean about telling the truth. It's admitting when you do mess up, becoming whole again. Commitment, respect, whatever those values are, those North Star values, those unshakable standards of life that you cannot live without. Make sure that they're part of the DNA of that group. I always say the blood is more important than the muscle and the heart more important than the head. Understand those non-negotiables and make sure everybody on that team understands them and lives them and embraces them. And if not, they shouldn't be on the team. That's number one. Number two, value those values of your teammates and the people that you're leading. They may have a value that's absolutely critical for them. Let me shut off my phone here. Sorry. So they may have a value or a standard in their life that's non-negotiable for them, their faith, their family. Like if you're going to be coaching some folks or leading folks through change or a team in business, if they have an autistic child at home or their faith is critical, they will not work on Sundays no matter what, et cetera, et cetera. If there's something in their life that is non-negotiable, you must understand what that is. So value their values, find out what's important to them. Once again, not what necessarily what they're fighting for, but what they're and who they're loving for. So it's got to be situational for those folks, because everybody on that team of business or in sports or whatever has something that they're passionate about. Make sure that you get to know them and respect them as well. And then also, I have a saying that's important when you're teaching folks is be a commander, not a demander.
Right.
In the military, we have wing commanders, platoon commanders, squadron commanders. We're not demanders. And part of being a commander in life is treating people as people first and as humans first, rather than employees or business partners or customers, et cetera. And you command adherence to standards, you command adherence to principles and you command influence through this connection with the heart once again. If they show up late, they're having a bad day, they're disrespectful, maybe there's something going on in their life that may be an indicator of their stress or their anger or their failure to accomplish and accommodate a standard in your squadron. Kids may be failing out of school or in a hospital, right?
Right.
Divorce paperwork may have just got signed. They're dealing with their health issues. There's something going on that may be getting them off this flight path, that if you spend a little bit of time connected with them and saying, let me get you back on this flight path, let me connect with you. That's an important way of building trust, to be in that partner in their life and helping them adhere to the standards, all while knowing that if people don't have the discipline or the integrity or those standards of excellence, maybe, just maybe, the most important thing you can do for that team of people that you're leading on the basketball court or in business may be to let that person go and prevent that virus from infiltrating the rest of the team. It's a hard thing for a leader to do. And sometimes you're fired or you're no longer part of this organization. I'm moving you to another segment because you don't fit here is critical, because many times we let that bad player with the bad attitude stay on the team and let that negativity virus impact everyone else. So
this is so valuable, because I'm just like a sponge taking all your information, because I'm in the leadership position where I'm running a team. So all these things are actually what I can apply into the real world. My last question to you, parenting, I feel that it is a leadership role.
yes, ma'am.
Because my dad was like a leader for me, where he would say that rolling stone gathered no moss. So continuously roll yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
Do not stop. So these are the messages like our parents. And still now I quote my dad. So my dad played a huge role in my life. So you being a father, what are some leadership leadership mantra that you would love your children to have from you?
Okay. And so we could talk about this a lot, and I appreciate it. You know, our parents teach us the good and sometimes the bad, right? My dad was a huge mentor, and my mom, but they also did some things I'm like, I'm not going to do that, right? And so learn from the good and the bad. And I tell my son sometimes, hey, if I mess up, if I do something that's disrespectful, whatever, I think I'm a pretty solid dad, right? But I make my mistakes, and if I do that, I say, hey, son, you know what? I was wrong. I shouldn't have done this. And I ask for you to apologize. I'm not perfect. Your parents are going to make mistakes, you know, just like you will. So I want him to understand that it's forgiveness, and understand you can't be perfect all the time is important. So pushing him to a standard of excellence is important. And part of it is realizing, hey, you're going to mess up. Fess up when you mess up, clean it up and get better. Number two is, Your self-talk is important. When he got angry yesterday, kicking the ball, he was missing the goal or doing this, he got very angry. And there was another young Mexican kid out there practicing. He was on the same goal as us, and I speak good Spanish, and we would talk a little bit, and he could speak good English too. But I love these young kids who come from foreign countries, who come over here and they're working, they're sweating and everything. And he's missing the ball. He's like, and I heard him say, "All right, it's okay. It's preseason. It's preseason. I'm getting out there." And I said, "What'd you say?" He's like, "You're loving this, Jim, right?" He's like, "It's preseason." So I had him coach my son. What would you say to him? And he saw my son getting a little angry. This kid was a couple of years older than Ace, my son. Hey, negative self-talk, get rid of that. And it goes back to what you were saying, John, about fulfilling your promises. You fulfilled your promise. You got out here. You weren't lazy on the couch. You made the kicks. You practiced. And so put yourself into that mindset of overcoming this. I came up with a great quote yesterday. I was coaching my son. I said, your time will come as long as you put in the time.
Yeah.
I was so proud of this quote. Jim, you're loving this, right,
It's
sir?
beautiful.
All of you, right?
Yeah.
Your time
It's
will
being
come,
written down as we speak.
right?
Yeah.
And so I made up this quote. And the thing is, you got to put in the time. Honor yourself, fulfill those promises. The peace comes after the pain. The peace comes because you did the work, you fulfilled the promises, you put in the sweat, you practiced, you shut your mouth when you should have, you said you were sorry, you cleaned it up. Your time will come when you put in the time.
So true.
Wow. I have a challenge to our listeners that comes from that, Waldo, because you just mentioned something very important with that point about positive self-talk and fulfilling your commitment. My challenge to our listeners is something that's changed my mindset on a lot of things. Consider all of your goals and all of your goals that are process oriented versus results oriented. Try to shift them so that they're a little bit more process oriented. Because I think oftentimes we get caught up in these, I want to make this amount of money this year or this month. And we're so, hell bent on these results that we don't put in the habits to be process oriented. What are your thoughts on that when it comes to, certainly there may be a place for results oriented goals, but when we're thinking from a process perspective, how much easier it is to build consistency and keep those promises to ourselves?
Roger that. That comes with experience. If you're on a diet or you're in the gym and trying to increase the weight, the diet starts by cutting the calories, limiting the sugar, and those small little disciplines. It doesn't happen overnight, after a couple of weeks, but sooner enough, the pounds are going to come off. Sooner enough, when you're on that treadmill and you're running that 12-minute mile, then it turns to 10 or 9. It will come. The results will come based on experience, and that confidence will come when you see that. But if you engage in the process, the results will come. So you got to divorce yourself from that result. You got to divorce yourself from the 3-pointer and just say, let me just get out there and practice. Let me divorce myself from the fact that I'm going to take these shots and they're not going to be on goal, or I'm going to get rejected on the phone, or I'm going to lose these sales or whatever. So follow the disciplines, take the steps and actions, and be patient. Patience is so important, especially for young folks, right? It's very, very, very important. And when you follow the process and stay connected with that and you're present, right? This is where flow state happens.
Mhm.
When you're in the process of not finishing the yoga, but just staying in the zone and breathing through it and just feeling the feelings and mentally just going through that, you're present to who you are. And this is why the gift of fear forces us to be so present. You're not thinking of anything else when you're having a massive panic attack at 30,000 feet. You are totally, what the heck is going on? And the trajectory that you take, the actions you take when you're totally present will determine the outcome. My fear and my pains and everyone's pains. I told my son when he was in the hospital, up all night, massive stomach pains and challenges and fear, and he had to go down morphine a couple of times. I said, "You're not thinking of anything else but this. How are you going to respond?" Right? He was so great. He suffered so well. He was so honorable. I let him know how much I appreciated that. But when you're going through these struggles in life, take advantage of that pain. When you're going through the victories, take advantage of that feeling. Envision that victory again. Make that such a prevalent part of your mindset, and focus on that, because what we focus on, what we attract, right? Asking you, I'll receive. Focus on the good as well. And this is something that I'm trying to practice more in my life. And so the process of how we deal with that process, and then also, like we said, the outcome, you want to envision that too, right? But if you know that, if you're confident in the fact that if you're doing the work, going through the process, those the outcomes will come.
Definitely.
But the bad outcome could come as well. Don't always focus on the missiles. Don't always focus on the negativity. We prepare for the worst, but we expect the best.
Right.
Yeah. And
Focusing
finally,
on making that 3-pointer.
Yeah. Definitely.
But then do the work and fulfill the
Right.
prophecy, John. I really appreciate you mentioning that, John, because it is so critical.
and thank you for the powerful point. And I know we're running up on our time, but we have to mention Never Fly Solo, and some of the lessons that our audience can get from getting that book, and a link down in the show notes for you to get your hands on that. If you're appreciating some of the insights you're hearing right now, I know you'll appreciate what you read there. What can we expect from Never Fly Solo? And you also mentioned another book coming up here, Waldo, in the
Sure.
works
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah. I got to get cranking on it. I've hired some coaches and some folks in my life who can help me kind of get out of my head and put this down on paper. It's a tedious process, but once again, I gotta focus on the process. You got to take one bite of the elephant at a time, right? Small little incremental steps. So, so the book Never Fly Solo, New York Times, Wall Street Journal bestseller. It's about partnerships. It's about courage, accountability. It's also about fear. I talk a little bit about some of the fears I went through in my life. I want to give everyone a copy of Never Fly Solo. It's $20 on Audible, and it's $25.95 hardcover copy. But as a thank you for listening to Jim's podcast, if you go to that website or that link, I want to give it to everyone for free as a gift, right? And you guys can
Wonderful.
download it as well.
Yeah.
You'll also get
Got it.
after going to that. You have a copy there?
Yeah.
Oh,
Got that.
wonderful. Awesome. And then also, you'll get a 5-video resilience challenge on dealing with fear, asking for help, refueling and retooling, lifting yourself out as well. So that's another link that you'll get as well. As kind of like a little video series on that. And then I'm all over social media, Waldo Waldman on LinkedIn and Instagram, if you want to connect with me there as well.
Definitely.
But I love the fact, Jim, that you are humble enough and know enough about coaching that your podcast is better with 2 other Top Guns on your wing. That says a lot about who you are, about your character, knowing that 3 is better than 1, and knowing that you're not flying solo either, sir, because you didn't say much. But the best coaches are the ones that let his teammates who are experts in other areas do the coaching. So thank you for emulating excellence and in your life as well, Jim.
We're very grateful for your kind words, and we look forward to continuing our conversation. We really appreciate all your wonderful insights today, and keep up your great work, and we will keep your son in our prayers as you move forward.
Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time. It's been an honor flying with you. God bless, and keep pushing up the throttle.